Hey everyone, welcome to today's Take Heart. Mike and I have been chatting a little about what we would have done differently had we known the lockdown in the context of the pandemic was coming. I don't know if you thought about that question. What would I have done differently if I'd known this was coming? Apart from stock up on more anti-vax. And one of the things that I know I would have done more of is practice the discipline of silence and solitude. That might in part be an emotional reaction to the fact that I'm now trapped at home with my 4 children and there is very little silence and very little solitude. But I don't think it's just that. As I've looked at myself over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of frantic activity because there's been an awful lot to do. But there's also been a real franticness often inside my spirit. It's felt, even when there's been a lull in the busyness, my soul has still felt like it's running on a treadmill. And there has not been a lot of inner peace and inner quiet. And that's why I'm drawn to the discipline of silence and solitude, because the fruit of it is an inner stillness before God. One of the verses that speaks to this, I think, is found in Psalm 46, verse 10. It's quite a well-known verse. God says in the psalm, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am God. Richard Foster, who's written his well-known book, The Celebration of Discipline, has a chapter on the discipline of silence and solitude. And I don't know if you remember when Mike spoke about it right at the start of the little series on the disciplines about a week ago now. One of the things that he was saying was, silence and solitude is not about getting away from people. Oh my word, I'm 2 people out. I need to get away from some people for some alone time. It's not that. What it is it's much more positive. Rather than I need to escape from people, it's I need to be alone with God. I just need to go and find somewhere where I can be still with my God. And the fruit of that, Richard Foster describes it in his book. He says this: if we possess inward solitude, this is what happens when we're able to practice this discipline. We get this internal quiet in our spirit before God. He calls it inward solitude. If we possess inward solitude, we do not fear being alone, for we know that we are not alone. Neither do we fear being with others, for they do not control us. In the midst of noise and confusion, we are settled into a deep inner silence. Whether alone or among people, we always carry with us a portable sanctuary of the heart. I love that phrase, a portable sanctuary of the heart. Gosh, how different my days might look if inside of me I had this intimacy, this stillness with me and my God. And that's what some of the fruit of the discipline of silence and solitude is. So when we practice it, one of the things that I remember reading in a book about silence by Ruth Haley Barton, she describes it like this: it's a bit like our lives are like a glass of river water. You know, if you scoop a glass of river water out, it's full of sediment swirling around, lots of dirt, it's very cloudy and murky and stuff. But if you put it on the side and you just leave it, then what happens after a while is the law of gravity just begins to take effect, just by leaving it alone. And all that sediment sinks to the bottom and the water becomes clear. And she says, so it is with silence and solitude. We walk into this kind of place of silence and solitude, and it's like our lives are full of chaos, you know, just everything swirling around, all these emotions churning, maybe that we haven't processed, all these thoughts bouncing around in our heads, you know, just all the chaos that's deep in us. And then you're just still. And you don't need to do a lot other than just be with God and just be still. And she says after a while, it's like the law of spiritual gravity begins to take an effect, and all the chaos that's swirling around just begins to settle down, and things become a little bit clearer. And having practiced this a little bit, I have found that to be the case. You know, it doesn't take very long actually, sometimes, just to sit and to let that stuff settle and ask God to be there. And just suddenly emotions that I wasn't aware I was feeling suddenly become a bit more obvious. Oh, I've been feeling jealous, or I've actually been feeling really excited about this, or I'm feeling really content, or there's something in me that's really discontent. What is that? Oh, it's this. And so our emotions maybe become a little more obvious to us. Sometimes when we're just racing through life, it's like the emotions are following on behind. And then when we stop, suddenly they have a chance to catch up and grab us. And we realize what we've been feeling all along just without knowing it. And the other thing that happens when we sit and we allow the stuff to settle down is we begin to tune into what God might be saying in that moment. And silence and solitude is a great way of just presenting ourselves before him, just to be, just for the sake of being. But also, one of the things that will happen is we will hear him more. There's this tiny little line in the book of Exodus where Moses spots the burning bush and he turns aside from where he was going to see the burning bush. And there's a little line that says, when the Lord saw that Moses had turned aside, he spoke to him from the bush. It's like silence and solitude is a little bit of a chance to just in our day turn aside and be. And often in that place, we'll hear him speak. So another psalm, Psalm 139, verse 17, the psalmist says, how precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And I love that, because isn't it precious to know God's thoughts and to hear him speak to us? And then he goes on to say, because your thoughts are so precious, when I awake, I am still with you. And as the sediment and the chaos and the emotions and everything and all the things we have to do and all the things we haven't, settle down and we're just still with him, suddenly the whisper, which is so often how he speaks, we're able to pick up on it. Really practically, how do we do this? I think it's finding a time and a space where we can do it. Mike's mentioned that he'll often, first thing in the morning, just go and sit in his garden and just be with the Lord. For me, I think I've said as well before, I found if I don't do it first thing, it doesn't happen, because once the day begins, it's quite full on. So I do it first thing. I get up early and most of the time manage to drag myself out of bed and sit there. I sit on the stairs in my house because that's the only real space I can find. And that's what I do. I sit and just am still with God. And for you, it might be in the evening. It might be in a lunch break. I don't know when it would work, but find a time and a space just to be with him. And remember that it feels counterintuitive, especially when life is hectic and we feel like we've got so many things to do. How can I take time out? You don't understand my schedule. I know it's hard and I know how busy many of us feel, even if we're on furlough, even if there's just so much going on at the moment in all sorts of different ways. But although it feels counterintuitive to take time to be still, what we'll find is everything else, then we just become more effective, more fruitful, more peaceful, because we begin to find that there's a stillness in our souls that means we do things just trusting him and in intimacy and in friendship with him. Where can you find that space for silence and solitude? It will cultivate what Richard Foster calls the portable sanctuary of the heart. That's something that's worth pursuing.